Welcome to Mindshock. This is your host, Bruce McGuire, and you are listening to the Logic Olympics, where you have the option of not just listening, but competing in the Logic Olympics, developing your logical mind, debating topics without any prep time. Anyone in the chat can participate. So, as always, if you enjoy the Mindshock podcast, find it interesting and informative and educational, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. You can also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Help support the chat that way. Make sure you're subscribed, like and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. We are going to jump right in here. A quick recap of Logic Olympics Round 1, and competing in every round is not required. All points carry over to all rounds. So, in round 1, Ethan W. actually put up the highest score with 1.5 points. In second place was Prophets C with 1 point. And the rules are very simple. With no prep time, anyone in the chat can volunteer to compete. You will get a topic of my choosing and which side you must support, either for or against the particular topic. You will only have approximately 1 to 2 minutes to make your case in the chat. And obviously the goal is not for people to just look up information. If you know, you know. So you got to get started quickly, right away. I'm not going to cut you off if you're still giving replies in the chat. Do not give, if you want to, you could try to give one long reply, but you can give a reply, think a couple seconds, give another reply, think a couple seconds. If your reply or argument is fallacious, I will call that out, why it's fallacious, and whether or not it will qualify for any points. We're going by half-point intervals, so if it's kind of decent but still not quite a robust argument, you're only going to get a half a point. If it's just completely fallacious, you get 0. So, in order to get your full point, you really have to, this is very difficult, obviously, but regardless of the topic, you have to think of all angles of the topic. You can't just attack one angle or one aspect of a topic, and that's it. You have to make as robust an argument as possible. Now, obviously, it's not going to be in-depth on every single variable of the argument. You don't have time. It's only 1 to 2 minutes. But you have to at least quickly address the major aspects of an argument. So, we have Ethan W., our current #1 ranked debater in the House. Denise is here. Free Palestine, Lucky Haskins, Mr. 1-to-1 in the house. You're giving yourself a point for not taking part again? Oh, come on, man. This is all a learning process. There's no expectations here. It's all about learning. So, who is volunteering? Who who wants to be the first competitor? And if the points end up being tied in the end, then the people that are tied are going to be simultaneously competing on a topic. That actually happened in round 1. Free Palestine has volunteered, so they will be first. So I will just use your name that you have here in the chat. I might have to summarize it a little bit just for space consideration. So, Free Palestine here Are you ready to rumble? Do you understand the rule set? So I'm going to give you a topic. I'm going to repeat it 3 times, just in case people's connections are buggy or whatnot. I'm going to repeat it 3 times on what you have to be either for or against, and then you will have approximately 1 minute, but I'm not going to cut you off if you're still making your argument. There's no timer. Ethan W. Does everybody hear me? Huh, that's weird. I mean, there was a black screen for a while, but might be you, Ethan W. Okay, so you will have approximately 1 minute. Free Palestine is going first. I'm gonna throw out something tricky for you, not because of your name. So this is gonna be tough. You are going to have to make a logical argument in support of the existence of God. A logical argument in support of the existence of God. Once more, a logical argument in support of the existence of God. Go. You have approximately 1 minute. I will be calling out any and all fallacies, any and all incomplete or inaccurate definitions. Sphinx Bear in the house. So free Palestine is up first. What do you got? What do you got? You're already 15 seconds down. Not so much time left. Not too much time left. You don't have to give the whole argument in one reply. You can reply multiple times. As many as you want. I'm not going to cut you off unless you really start, pushing past a minute and a half. The flat-out fact that we have astronomical perpetual cycles. Keep going, keep going. Remember, I said you have to have a robust argument. It can't just be one point or one aspect of something. You gotta try to address most of them. You can address them quickly, perfectly fine, but you gotta try to address most of the aspects. You got less than 30 seconds left. Again, I'm not going to cut you off if you're still going. Free Palestine, his assignment is to come up with a logical argument in defense of the existence of God. You're running out of time. Like I said, I'm not going to cut you off, but you gotta be typing out your replies. Hey, Lord Zed, no cheating. No cheating in the chat. Only the competitor is allowed to respond. Our creation is a non-rotating flat earth in the center of the whole universe. One creator. Oh, and when you're done, just put done. Otherwise, I'll cut you off. So you got a couple more seconds if you wanna you want to make one more point. I'm not gonna cut you off, but you're running out of time here. You're running out of time. Make your last point here. Make your last point. Let's go. 5, 4, 3, 2. If you start typing and, you could split sentences in half. As long as the replies are coming in, I'm not going to cut you off. It's a simulation. Okay, okay, I was going to cut you off right there anyway. Free Palestine gets no points. Here's why. So, a flat-out fact that we have astronomical perpetual cycles. So, there is vagueness there. Appeal to vagueness is a fallacy. There's vagueness there because by perpetual it means technically forever. So we don't really know that, right? We have our lifetimes, we have records of many, many lifetimes. Now, there obviously the astronomical cycles, the celestial bodies above, seem to have a very, very distinct and repeatable cycle. That is a flat-out fact relative to our observation. However, you got to support that more on the perpetual side and exactly how it relates to a creator. I mean, obviously, for that to happen accidentally, I mean that's rough, but again, you're defending the position of the creator, not against some kind of Big Bang lunacy. Not that somehow magically the Big Bang happened. So again, that doesn't mean your statement is wrong in any way. But when you're making a logical argument, you have to address every aspect of everything to as much as possible. So to make that a more definitive claim, you could have said that the astronomical cycles appear to be perpetual, very, very distinct and repetitive, as opposed to completely random. Also, our creation is a non-rotating flat Earth in the center of the whole universe. One creator. I mean, that technically would either be circular reasoning and begging the question. Again, not that you're wrong, but you need support there for it not to be begging the question or circular reasoning. For example, the center of the whole universe, you could have brought up the cosmic background radiation, where even so-called modern science has measured that the cosmic, whether accurately or not, that's a support that the cosmic background radiation is all pointing towards the center, which being Earth. So, Sphinx Bear says, I would have asked up front how you were defining God. I mean, the traditional sense, the creator of reality, of existence, of the universe. However, it's a general term. So, yeah, you have a little bit of flexibility. I mean, you could use it as an intelligent video game designer. I mean, that would all be under the umbrella of creator. I guess I should have said creator. But, I think people get the point. Okay, same thing with it's a simulation. Where's the support? So, obviously, simulation theory does have some supports. So, again, not that, your points were bad or you bring them up, but you got to back them up more. Does that make sense, Free Palestine? And, of course, feel free to ask any questions, both competitors and the people in the chat. This is all about learning. I mean, this is why I was doing this. It's not just about the prize, which there will be a grand prize, but we are going to be doing a lot of rounds. So, does that make sense, Free Palestine? On how you could have made a better defense there with more supports? I mean, there's plenty more. I mean, I'm not going to spend, all the time, but I just want to kind of address what argument was made, why it was fallacious, and how to support the particular argument a little bit better. Free Palestine says the Antikythera mechanism, aka flat Earth working model, is evidence of perpetual cycles, and it makes sense. I mean, you don't have to add that and it makes sense there, because I mean, makes sense to whom? To you? Not that it wouldn't make sense to other people, but phrasing is very important here in logical debate. You could have also brought up the yin yang, of course. I mean, there's a lot of things you can bring up. Obviously, you don't have to bring up 100 of them, but bringing up 1 or 2 to support. I mean, that's, 1 or 2 supports on each aspect of the argument, and you got to have at least 2-3 aspects. I mean, like I said, I could push the timer to closer to 2 minutes. I just don't want people looking stuff up and cheating per se. So as long as you're still typing, I won't cut you off. So you could address at least a couple aspects. You can't only address 1 or 2. I'll say we have to do maybe 3 minimum, 3-4 aspects. And if you're rolling and your points are really excellent, I'm not going to cut you off. So who is the next volunteer? Sun UV Liberty says evidence of intelligent design is everywhere, from chemistry to weather cycles to the complexity of organs such as the eye, not to mention the mathematics, the golden ratio, and the God equation. Oh, you're stealing some of the points I've used. Yes, that would have been a supported defense. I mean, you would need more than that. You would need at least 1 or 2, but that would have been a pretty good defense. Oh, Lucky? Okay. Lucky Haskins is up next. let's see. Let's see what kind of points Lucky Haskins can come up with. So, Lucky, your topic here is against the position that Bigfoot exists. Against the position that Bigfoot exists. Once more, against the position that Bigfoot exists. So, your assignment is to make a logical argument of why Bigfoot does not exist. Get going. Approximately 60 seconds. We can push it to 2 minutes if people are rolling. Not one single piece, or not one single valid piece of evidence exists. Video evidence is far too easy to fabricate. Yeah, this is pretty good. You see how quickly he's making short answers, but they're pretty quick. So as long as he's rolling, I'm not going to cut him off. He's still got time, though. Still got at least 30, 40 seconds left. Faking Bigfoot is profitable. Hello, Big Pine Sailing. Welcome to round 2 of the Logic Olympics. Ethan W. is in the lead. I believe he's in the chat. All points carry over round to round. Ethan W. has 1.5 points. Profits C has 1 point. I don't know if she's in here, though. You do not have to attend every round. Your points will always carry over. Lucky Haskins continues here. People love the mystery, so chatter is prevalent, creating an illusion of probability. Maybe 15 more seconds, 1 or 2 more responses, unless you just keep rolling. Oh, Ethan W., I see you. Don't worry, you'll get to compete. Should we save you for the end, since you're already in the lead? I mean, you'll still get your chance, but to rack up more points. If Bigfoot was real, I would have seen it. All right, so I'm going to call it here. I mean, try to say done, but, you know, that was pretty much a minute. That was a little over a minute. So, okay, let's examine. Okay, he's still going. Someone would have recovered bones. Okay, done. Okay, so let's, yeah, that was a pretty good demonstration of how to do it. Like, he could have made his responses a little longer because I wasn't going to cut him off, and he could have added a couple more, but that's what it's going to look like. So now let's examine, because if we give him too much time, he's going to be going searching stuff. That's not how we want to do this. We want to measure existing information and how valid the argument is, how many fallacies are used. So his first point here, not one single valid piece of evidence exists. So that is a false premise. Logical fallacy, because first of all, what denotes valid? So a little bit more specificity there, but there actually are DNA samples, hair samples, and arguably actual body recoveries. Now, video evidence, the validity of which, I mean, that is in dispute. We'll get to his next point. Before we get to his next point of video evidence is far too easy to fabricate, video evidence, it's still evidence. Now, the validity, it's a slippery slope there because it could be valid. Now, for those that have seen the Patterson-Gimlin footage, the high-resolution footage, there's actually no eye slits in the suit. I mean, this footage came out years and years ago before the AI rollout for consumers anyway. So, oh man, if I can only remember who did that. If you look up high-resolution Patterson-Gimlin, was it Green? Something Green, possibly, was the guy that did it. And you could even see the ripples in the muscles in the suit. So I would call that particular video valid, whether or not it proves definitively. Obviously, a single video can't really prove anything, but it was captured on film. It was restored from the original film, allegedly, unless you think he's all lying. I believe he had videos of how he did the restoration as well. So that would be a valid piece of evidence, whereas some kind of grainy, blurry footage like most of them, those are not quite valid pieces of evidence, even though it could still be a real Bigfoot. So that would be a false premise. It could also possibly be an appeal to extremes, whereas if you said there's not there doesn't appear to be a substantial, like if Bigfoot were real in large numbers at least, there would be a lot more substantial pieces of evidence. But saying there's not one single valid piece of evidence, that's also an appeal to extremes. So no credit there. Video evidence is far too easy to fabricate. Correct. So that is true. That is a good argument. Faking Bigfoot is profitable. Also, very, very true. And if you mentioned Patterson Gimlin specifically, that would have made the argument stronger. Because you see what I mean about supporting each part? Like, that's a good point, but it needs support. That's what makes it logical, where you have that support for the argument, regardless of whether the argument is true or not. People love the mystery, so chatter is prevalent, creating an illusion of probability. Yes. Now, this one's tough. I actually like that you said that, because this is a very that's a very interesting point, because there's pros and cons to that point. Because yes, people love the mystery, so the chatter is prevalent. Now, if we're saying all the witnesses are lying, I mean, I don't know. But if the witnesses are telling the truth, the chatter, or they think they saw a Bigfoot, regardless of whether they did or not, that would increase the chatter and the love of the mystery, because there's some substance there to the sightings. Not that Bigfoot is real, but there's some kind of believability that at least the witnesses think that that's what they saw. Same thing with ghosts or other paranormal phenomena. Like, most of them are not lying. They think they saw that. Even if they didn't, they're being honest, and that's what brings up the love of the mystery and the chatter. Now, regarding the illusion of probability, I mean, yeah, that's also tough, because that's almost like a vagueness fallacy as well. Because what exactly does that mean? An illusion of probability. What would the probability be? Which would be tough to discern either way. And to the outsider not involved, it does create an illusion of probability. So, I mean, it's just such a general, vague statement that it's not so, you didn't really support it there. So, I mean, it was good, though. I mean, I like that you brought it up, because this is one of these points where it's not bad, it's not great, it's just there needs to be a little bit more substance and support there. Obviously, you could have, followed up. You don't have to make long responses, but Lord Zed says, trick question, Bigfoot's real. Well, it's not you're making a logical argument. That doesn't mean whatever you're arguing for or against is true or untrue. The True Few said, faking Bigfoot could ruin your reputation. Yeah, that's also a good point. Lucky Haskins says, if Bigfoot were real, I would have seen him, so that would be an anecdotal logical fallacy. So, oh, this is tough. This is tough. Because Lucky Haskin definitely deserves a quarter point, but I don't want to go to quarters. Because he made some valid points here regarding the video evidence is easy to fabricate. But also, I mean, it would be nice if there was maybe one or two examples of it actually being faked. Or maybe not even Bigfoot, because if you don't know all of the names of the faked footage, perhaps footage of something else that was faked, just to support that it's easy to fabricate. Because it is easy to fabricate, but you need a little bit of support there. So, and I mean, yeah, faking Bigfoot's also profitable. Again, if you mentioned Patterson Gimlin and how much money Patterson made, I actually don't think, how much did Gimlin make? I don't remember. There was, I think they had a falling out over the whole thing in money too. But if you brought that up for support. So, maybe a quarter point for Lucky Haskins, but we're going to deal in half points. So far, nothing on the scoreboard. Does that make sense, Lucky Haskins? Wow, Lucky Haskins says, I have had a Bigfoot experience myself, for real. Wow, can you imagine having a Bigfoot experience and then having to argue against it? Free Palestine, thanks for the super chat. In 1850, Russian mountaineer caught a big Bigfoot, and she was beautiful after shaving her out. She was 9 feet tall, couldn't talk, but she was a good lover. I don't know if that's the same Russian one that I went over on one of my Bigfoot podcasts. There was one famous one. I'm not sure if that's the one you're referring to, or I mean, I guess I think there were more than one reported. Jess Palmer says, you brought up Bigfoot in the TV, just a commercial of Bigfoot. That would be synchronicity for you. Big Pine Sailing says, LOL, this is awesome. We're all here to learn. Scott Matznick in the house. Hello there. Shifty Eyes Shady, the Florida Skunk Ape. Yes. I actually did an interview with a Bigfoot witness in Florida. It was I think it might have been the first official interview I had on Mindshock. You guys can check it out. It's quite fascinating. The guy, I think he had, it was so long, it was in the first year of the channel. It was a number of years ago. A guy contacted me. And yeah, Florida is actually, it seems to have a lot of sightings. People are always thinking Washington State or Canada, but Florida actually has a lot of sightings. Sun UV Liberty says, did anybody see when the Olympic runner tried to cover the distance by Patterson Gilmore Creature? He smoked his knee and failed miserably. Crazy. Yeah, the stride and the gait. Well, not only that, but the length of the arm and the hand moving. So the length of the arm was actually a lot longer than what was the guy's name that claimed to have been in the suit? Geronimus. Was it Bob Geronimus? Hieronymus. Geronimus, like ginormous. I think it was Hieronymus. Was it Bob Hieronymus? Something like that. Yeah, they actually did an overlay. I think might have been a History Channel, and it didn't fit. So, okay. Lucky Haskins says, I did not see one. Had all the basics, though. Stick banging on a tree, throwing things at me, etc. Your assessment of my answers was spot on. Yeah. Okay, cool. And that's what makes this so interesting, because you might have to argue for or against points that you might even know are flat out incorrect. But to develop logic and reason properly, you should be able to argue any side of any topic logically. Okay, who's competing next? I think we should save, unless you tell me you got to get out of here early, I'm going to save the person with the most points that's in the chat for last. Kind of like a title card, champ fights last. That's the main event, baby. So who else? Has anybody volunteered that I missed in the chat? Who's up next? Test your might in logic. Sun UV Liberty said, I used to live in the Panhandle. Cryptids were my neighbors. QCZ in the house. Hello. We are holding the Logic Olympics round 2. No notice, no prep time. Anybody in the chat can volunteer to compete. You'll be given a topic you must argue for or against, and you'll have approximately 60 to 90 seconds to make your points in the chat. But I'm not going to cut you off if you're still giving responses. I'll let you keep going, and then I will evaluate your response, and we'll see if there were any logical fallacies committed or incorrect definitions used. And if it's a solid argument, you get a full point. If it's semi-solid, you get a half a point. Okay, so we have 3 people. Oh, wow, we have 4 people next. So I totally just blanked on who said it was next. Sphinx Bear. Sphinx Bear said, I'll go. So Sphinx Bear is up next. Okay, so Sphinx Bear's been around for a while, but I'm not going to be giving easy or hard topics based on how long you've been around. I'm just randomly selecting topics from a list, and then for or against. And obviously, since we're on YouTube, there are certain topics that I can't bring up that I would like to, but we'll do what we can with the existing ones. So Sphinx Bear, this is going to be a tough one. Your position must be against civilian populations having access to firearms. Your position is against civilians having access to firearms. Your position is against civilians having access to firearms. 60 to 90 seconds. Start rolling. And then when you're done, just say done. I might cut you off if you're not giving fast enough responses. Obviously, you can have a couple seconds before the first one, and then if you keep rolling, I won't cut you off. Let's see what Sphinx Bear will do. This is challenging, Sun UV Liberty. This is challenging, because if you can't argue points, if you can't argue against what you might know is completely true, then your argument might not be as robust. Sphinx Bear says the culture promotes things such as alcohol and drugs which aren't safe to combine with firearms. Yeah, depending on the culture. Yeah, can't argue that. Yeah, that's a hard question. That's a hard one. Got about 30 seconds left, 30, 40 seconds left. So you gotta address at least, I would say two, you gotta at least address three aspects. Three aspects. And like I said, as long as you're still giving responses, I won't cut you off. Culture also has an interest in violent video games and movies, and without proper education is another dangerous mix. What else you got? 15 seconds? 20 seconds, maybe? Let's see what Sphinx Bear can come up with. Let's see what Sphinx Bear can do with this. 65% of American adult population is on some kind of psychotropic drug, which can cause sudden mental episodes. Okay, alright, wow, okay. That's a staggering number. Let me fact check that. Let me fact check that real quick. Actually, 2020 is showing 16.5%. Are more kids than adults? Wow. Yeah, this is crazy. 13.6%. Yeah. So that's an inaccurate stat, but I'm not gonna not give points on that alone just because, I mean, we're gonna be using the spirit of what he said. Okay, so let's, I mean, I'll address the specific accuracy as well, because obviously if it's not accurate and the spirit isn't there. Okay, so first point he made is the culture promotes things such as alcohol and drugs which aren't safe to combine with firearms. Now, nobody's going to argue that guns are, I don't think anybody would argue that firearms should be combined with alcohol and drugs. That's an interesting point. Very interesting point. He could have supported that even more with kind of mentioning that most of these previously described peaceful people, just really good people, killing their own family when they got drugs, when they got, high or drunk with a firearm. I mean, there's plenty of examples. You don't have to cite the specific ones, but you could have referenced that, there are a lot of homicides and people killing their own children while drunk or high. It's actually extremely rare if they're not drunk or high. So that would have made that point stronger. And also specifying, the culture of the particular country, but I mean, that's kind of, context is there, so that wasn't incorrect. Culture also has an interest in violent video games, movies without proper education. Okay, so this one is not substantiated. This one is potentially a false premise because there are many studies that actually show the opposite. That teenagers, troubled or not, they're less curious about engaging in real violence if they're getting it out of their system in video games. Same thing with movies or music. So, but I mean, you can probably find some studies on both sides. Obviously, studies are faulty, but that's not really substantiated solidly unless you can come up with more than one study on that. So that wasn't great. 65ish% of it. It might be. Okay, let me. I know it's high. You could have referenced maybe that most school shooters or mass shooters were on psychotropic drugs. Yeah, it seems to be nowhere near that, even combined with children. But let's take that exact number out of the equation for a second, because obviously psychotropic drug use can cause sudden mental episodes. So if you had brought up the fact that most, I mean, I don't know if it's 80 or 90% or even higher of mass and school shooters were on, or alleged shooters were on psychotropic drugs, because that would have been a stronger point. So, the culture is a good point. This is tough because you definitely would have gotten a quarter point. Now, the question is, did you do enough to get a half a point? I mean, obviously, the topic is really, really tough. I'm leaning no, just because, again, if you had brought up, let's say, because you got, the video game movies, there's so many studies showing the opposite, where there might be one or two. I don't know. Yeah, I don't think you substantiated that enough there. And then if you brought up, the example of people killing their families while drunk or high with firearms, because the majority do. And then if you also brought up the majority of school or mass shooters were on psychotropic drugs, and then yeah, so you could have made that argument a bit better. Yes, you were grasping at straws. I'm gonna say we're gonna keep this super strict. So if we did quarter points, you would have got a quarter, but I'm not gonna award the half. Oh, antidepressants. Antidepressants. You could have made it a little bit more general, just drugs in general, because antidepressants can have, obviously, various side effects as well. I don't even see a really good stat. 14% adults aged 18 to 39. For those 19%. Yeah, still not quite there. Okay, increases by 35%. Oh, wow. Yeah, so, SSRIs. I mean, there's a lot. Yeah, I mean, you almost have to go to drugs in general because, yeah, it depends on the exact type of drugs. They're all classified separately. Yeah, that one's hard. I mean, that one is hard. And there could be various negative side effects. Yes, another argument one could make is just depending on the society, because you can't, if the country is small enough, and depending on the culture, like which I think Japan has a relatively low murder rate now, although they used to have a high suicide rate, and then you'd have to address that aspect of it as well. Obviously suicide wouldn't necessarily be prevented by restrictions on firearms, but it would definitely prevent more than zero. Now, in the U.S. is that's a different argument, but it, like, again, I didn't mention the country. I just said against civilians owning firearms. So you could address different types of countries based on their population size, based on their culture, what's going on, the location, just all those things. So you could definitely have made a little bit more robust argument there. Anybody have any questions about that? Everybody's scoreless tonight. We are using strict rules, but learning is the name of the game here. This is educational, so I think we're doing pretty well, and everybody getting sharper. So as the rounds go on, when the same people keep competing, I think they're going to get better and better at this. So who is next? I kind of want to go in order of the volunteers. One of the new people was next, right? Well, I'm sure you will next time, Sphinx Bear, and you might get an easier topic next time. There will be plenty of rounds, all points carry over. So QCZ, wait, were you next? You said I'll test. Does that mean you'll compete? And then after that, it's Lord Zed. Then, oh, I just noticed Sarah Catherine in here. Hi, Nick Fingar. Am I too late to the party? No, nope. Okay, so we have a lot of people going. So QCZ, are you still in here? Okay, yeah. You were I try to go in order of the volunteers. So QCZ is next. Nice lengthy name. Okay. So, QCZ, your topic is as follows. You must make the defense for women having the right to vote. Women should have the right to vote. Women should have the right to vote. And just keep in mind, a lot of these topics are tricky that have several layers and aspects to them. Even the phrasing of the challenge might be up to debate. Now, you can't really I mean, you can ask me to clarify more if you want, but I can't really clarify that for you further. But do not assume you can't address different aspects of different things. I don't want to give that away exactly on what I mean, but I will after you're done. Education and entertainment is the name of the game here. Let's see what QCZ can come up with. Oh, Prophet C is here. Yes. Hello. Yeah, we got a lot of people going. I might actually have to stop new volunteers. We might only be able to take one more. Hey, Lucky Haskins, take away that comment. You can't help. Take that out. So that's up to the competitor. The competitor has to figure out everything about the challenge. Women should have the right to vote in a democratic society which really wants to be inclusive of all of its citizens. The spirit of democracy is rule by the people for the people. Women are people just like men. Give you another 30 seconds or so. Women needs the right to vote to represent their respective subjective rights, which men may not always consider. Subjective ideas. Subjective ideas. Okay, got another 20 seconds or so. Yes, Shifty Eyes, Shady. Yep. If you haven't checked out my YouTube short on a logical, or I forgot how I even titled that, but it was on gun control, and I put up all the stats. QCC says, bah, that's pretty much it. I like the bah. Okay, so let's examine QCC's argument. Now, Lucky Haskins, if you noticed what he wrote, that's what I meant when I was talking, just because the phrasing is defending women's right to vote, that doesn't mean that voting is good or bad. That doesn't mean that. You're defending that. So as part of the defense, you would have to address what voting even means, right? Because let's say voting is bad, then why should they have the right to vote? Again, does that make sense? So the reason why, again, if I know maybe you're new to the channel, I don't know if you've seen my logical analyses or breakdowns, but the reason why very few people can argue logically is because it's almost like they take for granted all of these things. Like they built a house of cards. So how can you argue fallaciously when you're dancing around one of the top layers of a house of cards? It's very difficult. Not impossible. It's not impossible to make a logical argument, but you would have to address all of those points. So, women should have the right to vote in a democratic society which really wants to be inclusive of all of its citizens. the spirit of democracy is ruled by the people for the people. That's a solid point. We're not talking about the United States here. I simply said defend women should have the right to vote. So, for example, in ancient Greece, all of the citizens would be voting. So, if that's the democracy, and it is in the spirit of democracy, whether democracy is good or bad, democracy obviously is mob rule. I mean, I wouldn't argue that it's good, but that's not the point here. The phrasing that QCZ had there on his first point was actually very good, because he stated women should have the right to vote in a democratic society which wants to be inclusive of all its citizens. That's a solid point. If that's what the society wants, regardless of good or bad, that is accurate. The spirit of democracy is ruled by the people for the people. I mean, obviously, the United States is not a democracy, it's a constitutional republic, but I never specified United States. So QCZ's first point is solid there. Women are people just like men. Sure. I mean, that's kind of neither here nor there argument. I mean, it's not really specific enough. If you expanded on that as women are human beings just like men, women, obviously, human beings have rights. So if women are human beings, they should also have rights. So if the society, I liked your phrasing on point one, I have to say. That was solid phrasing there, because none of that phrasing was fallacious, because he's talking about what the society wants. He's not talking about whether it's good or bad. And he defined the spirit of democracy accurately. So that's all pretty solid. Women need the right to vote to represent their respective subjective ideas, which men may not always consider. Also, an interesting point there, where if the society wants voting, then that would be valid, and if human beings have rights. So I guess I didn't really like women are people just like men. I mean, what does people mean? If you had stated women are human beings just like men, women have human rights just like men have human rights. So if humans have human rights, how could women not vote if they're also a human being with rights in a society that wants to have a democracy? So, yeah. And if they're not forcing their government or law on any of the members of society who do not want it forced upon them. Like, let's say you had 10 people in a village, and that was a democracy, and all 10 agreed, they all agreed that they want a democracy, and they fully agree to what everybody decides. I mean, obviously, they could also leave the village, which is a little different in countries, but yeah, so, yeah, that was a pretty decent argument. Pretty decent. Short and sweet. So that was 3 points. Women are people. The phrasing wasn't quite perfect. I'm gonna have to give QCZ a full point, just because. I mean, that was just minor, saying women are people. Like, it could have been stronger, but that's more than half a point, because his opener was actually fantastic. I really liked the phrasing. It wasn't fallacious at all. So I'm gonna give QCZ a full point. Because and that was a tough one to defend, but did you see Lucky Haskins' comment where he talked about just the point of voting, the illegitimacy, and all of that? I'm just curious whether you saw it or not when you were giving your responses. Because if you didn't see it and you still phrased it like that, that's impressive. He removed it. So wow. Okay, very impressive for QCZ. He gets a full point. A full point for QCZ. Is this your first time to the channel at all, or have you seen the other podcasts? It's almost kind of funny that he might have accidentally phrased it so well. But I'm not saying you did or you didn't, but oh, okay, you saw the other podcast. Okay. Yeah. All right. Excellent. Oh, we got Zetetic in the house here. If you haven't checked out his Twitter, quite an interesting Twitter, posting a lot of thought-provoking and logical arguments regarding the shape of the Earth. Very, very interesting. Lord Zed says women don't know anything about war. It's not in their DNA. It was mostly men who fought and won wars. They shouldn't have any say when it comes to how to fight a war. Men should choose the leader. Again, I didn't specify what society. So what QCZ said is his first point. In a democratic society, which really wants to be inclusive also. I mean, he could have specified even further, but technically a village with 10 people, that are all 10 are voting on all decisions, that would technically be a democracy. Now, since if he hadn't, if he had specified the United States, we would have had huge issues, right? Like, he wouldn't have got his point there. Because, first of all, the U.S. is a constitutional republic, now democracy in the first place. If he had specified exact countries with issues regarding war and other things, I mean, he would not have got his point. Because, as Lord Zed just said, I mean, there's other considerations. Like, for example, if there's selective service and voters might be brought to the front lines to die, and women are not in the selective service, so they wouldn't have to be brought to the front line to die, but they would still vote on the leader who might start a war. I mean, that's kind of an uneven scenario there, but that's not, again, QCC did not specify which democratic society, and that's why that argument was quite logical. Okay, so who is next? I totally forgot. South to west in the house here. My mind is always shocked on these live streams. Okay, so I want to go in order though. I think that's how we should do it. So who volunteered after QCZ? We might actually have to cap how many people, because we got a lot of people in line. I think it was Lord Zed, and then Sun UV Liberty. So Lord Zed is next. Okay, Lord Zed, are you ready? Yes, Sun UV Liberty is after Lord Zed. And then Prophet C is here. So then we'll go Prophet C. If you want to compete, your points carry over from the previous round. And then Ethan W will wrap it up. And then if we have any ties, there'll be a tiebreaker round. Okay, Lord Zed is completely ready. Okay, this is going to be tough. Lord Zed, your assignment is to make a logical argument for the existence of extraterrestrials. A logical argument for the existence of extraterrestrials. A logical argument for the existence of extraterrestrials. Go. 60 to 90 seconds. Pay attention to what the direction was. Extraterrestrial. Address all aspects. So I would say you got to make at least, you have to address at least more than 2 aspects. Let's see what Lord Zed himself is an extraterrestrial, isn't he? Anybody watch Power Rangers? What planet is Lord Zed from? In Power Rangers. You don't need to bite your tongue because, Lord Zed says, there is jellyfish, so I would argue there could be extraterrestrial, but they wouldn't look like people. They would look like weird things in the ocean, since if everything started from one single cell, it all spread out. Got about another 30, 40 seconds or so. Again, if you're still making responses, I won't stop you. I'd say the ocean is evidence for there could be life in space. What else you got? You kind of, well, I'm gonna hold off. I don't want to give instructions while they're answering, so you get about another 20 seconds. Make your points. Make your points. 15 seconds or so. Because everything started from one single-celled organism and it's spread out. There is weird stuff in the dark of ocean that could be weird stuff in the dark of space. Oh, wait. Did I just repeat that? Oh, no. You said... Oh, wait. Did I? Alright, 10 seconds. Let's go. One final point if you want to make it. If it's a, multiple response point, I'm not going to cut you off, but try to make one more if you have time. Let's go. Gotta be quick on your feet for these Logic Olympics. You gotta be quick. Let's count it down. 5. Okay, he's going. Since there's weird stuff in the dark of hard-to-reach parts of the ocean, could be weird stuff in dark to hard-to-reach space. Alright, so if your responses are done, you're gonna be done. I don't want the bell for the fallacies or the bell for timer. I mean, this is just a learning exercise here. Everybody's here to learn. Okay, so we're gonna have to call it on Lord Zed. Time's up for Lord Zed. Let's examine Lord Zed's argument here. So he really was fixated. He was really fixated on the ocean for some reason. So jellyfish, so I would argue there could be extraterrestrial, but they wouldn't look like people since they look like weird things. So, I mean, this is anywhere from a non-congruent argument to a non-sequitur. Because, and on top of that, it could be a circular reasoning begging the question false cause fallacy stack there. Because do we know everything started from a single organ? I mean, you presupposed. Oh, wait, no, you said in the ocean, since if everything started from a single cell. Okay, hold on. I take that back. I take that back, my friend. I take that back. Okay, so there is jellyfish, so I would argue there could be extraterrestrial, but they wouldn't look like people. So, also, that's almost like that's a red herring, because your defense is the existence of it, not what they would look like. So that's still a red herring semi-non sequitur there. And then if everything started from a single cell and it all spread out. Yeah, we're not talking about what they would look like. Your job was to defend their existence, not what they looked like. And ocean is evidence for there could be. How is ocean? Where's the support there? Ocean is evidence for there could be life in space. Oh, wait, I don't take it back, because here in the follow-up you said because everything started from one single-celled organism and it all spread out. There is weird stuff in dark of ocean, could be weird stuff in dark of space. So, I mean, there could be anything with anything. So, and that's also circular reasoning begging question false cause if everything didn't start from a single-celled organism and spread out. You seem to be weirdly obsessed with the ocean as well. Okay. Yeah, so no points there for Lord Zed. I hope that was quite clear. He said, I don't believe in aliens really, but I was playing devil's advocate with myself. Jellyfish make me think, I don't know, there could be jellyfish stuff up in space. So you could have brought up a couple things. You could have brought up, well, first of all, extraterrestrial doesn't necessarily mean, so how are we going to define Earth? So if Earth is our known terrestrial Earth, extraterrestrials don't necessarily have to come from outer space, as Shifty Eyes Shady said. So that's kind of what I meant with pay attention to the phrasing. So we're not dancing on the top of a house of cards. But either way, You could also bring in not just biblical, but various ancient civilizations talked about a medium in space, whether ether or whatever. Obviously, the Bible mentions waters above, waters below. So if you had mentioned the waters or a water type medium as in the ocean, you could have maybe played off of that, but we're not really talking. And since there's life in the ocean, there could be life. If there's life in the waters below, there could be life in the waters above. If you wanted to make a biblical argument, obviously that's not specifically scientific, but you could mention a lot of the truths in the Bible, regardless of whether the whole thing is true or not. So that's it wouldn't necessarily be bulletproof evidence by any means, but it would be some kind of substantiation just to back up that point. Also, extraterrestrial does it could be they could be coming from other dimensions. Extraterrestrial simply means not originating from the terrestrial Earth, as in the known terrestrial Earth. So, does that make sense? So far, QCZ is the only one who would put up a point. Sun UV Liberty says, assuming the stars' planets are what we are taught they are, statistically, there's a high probability there must be some type of extraterrestrial life. Also, they have found microorganisms on meteors and asteroids, or have they? But subtracting from the microorganisms, well, do the meteors that are on Earth? Okay. Well, do we have evidence exactly where they came from? But from the first point, assuming stars are planets, or you could have said, because different people are taught different things. If you kind of just said, if the heliocentric, if the commonly accepted heliocentric globe model of the universe is true, then there would be a high probability. Yes, the Drake equation actually mathematically backs that up. Obviously, math doesn't mean it's true, but the Drake equation is the foundation for SETI, I believe. I believe the timeline was that, where the math, again, they were presupposing variables, but the math of the Drake equation you could have used to back that up as well. You could have also used testimony again. Sun UV Liberty says, don't pedantic me, bro. That's not being pedantic, that's being accurate. Pedantic means over focusing on points that don't matter, like, for example, your grammar. Not that there's something wrong with your grammar, but pedantic, if a critical point, dissecting a critical point is not being pedantic. What separates a fallacy from a non-fallacy, there are certain details there. They could be complex, supposedly minor details, but they're not pedantic because they're critical to what is being discussed. You could have also used similarity within abduction, alleged abductees, as long as it was phrased properly. So testimony, so first of all, it depends on the testimony. See, single testimony is different than if you have dozens or even hundreds of eyewitness testimonies that all match up, particularly, let's say, ancient testimonies, or there was a famous case, I'm trying to remember where it was. Was it somewhere in northern Canada where Eskimos had one of the earliest people who collected a report of an abduction from Eskimo? Were they Eskimos? Somewhere in the northern tundra, that they didn't have internet, they didn't have TV, they didn't even know anything about aliens, and they drew the gray alien. So, that's kind of, that would be a black and white fallacies on whether or not testimony is hearsay or not. It depends on the testimony. And then also, are you only looking at a single witness, or are you looking at dozens or potentially hundreds of witnesses? How many of them had contact with each other, or how many of them were exposed to potential media or information that could have influenced their account? That is what would determine exactly how valid it is. But it is evidence, it's just by itself, it's not solid enough. Okay, so who was next? Was Sun UV Liberty next? Is Ethan W still here? Okay, Sun UV Liberty said, if we're going with the true metal universe, and of course they're extraterrestrials, they're called angels, and we see them every time we look at the stars. There, I fix it. Okay, Sun UV. So I think we're gonna go Sun UV Liberty, Prophet C. If you didn't mention if you wanted to compete tonight, and then Ethan W. Okay, Prophet C wants to go. Okay, so it's gonna be Sun UV Liberty, Prophet C, and then Ethan W. And then we're probably gonna have to close it at that point. And if there's a tie, we'll go to tie break. Yeah, Lord said I kind of got. Yeah, I got your point there. Yeah. Oh, it's not a bad point. Like I said, if you could have probably backed it up, just not just with the Bible alone, but other ancient civilization cosmologies with different mediums outside of the Earth. Big Pine Sailing wants. We'll see where we are on time. So Sun UV Liberty. This is what this is your topic here. Your topic is against. Actually, wait. I think we might have done that one on the first round. Hold on a second. Let me double check. Okay, yeah, we did that. Okay, I have to give you a new topic. I'm gonna try not to repeat topics round to round, although I guess it wouldn't be that big of a big deal, but I definitely don't want to repeat topics, let's say three, with it. There has to be at least like 4 or 5 rounds in between any kind of repeated topic. So here is your topic. Should healthcare you have to defend healthcare being a right. Healthcare should be a right for all people. Healthcare should be a right for all people. Healthcare should be a right for all people. And Sun UV Liberty is off. 60 to 90 seconds. Let's see what we got here from Sun UV Liberty. Matari Sensei in the house. I want to see Mindshock compare Koch postulates to the Bradford Hill criteria. I'll do a podcast on that, actually. I'm working on a few different extended logical podcasts where I'll be covering a lot of that. Too late to join. I'm not 100% sure. We'll see. We got a lot of people that want to go. And we also have to save time just in case there's a tie break. Sun UV Liberty said, since healthcare entities receive government funding, the public should benefit from their expense. Got about, let's say, 40 seconds left, maybe. Let's see what Sun UV Liberty can come up with. And again, for anybody joining, there's approximately 60 to 90 seconds. I don't want to have a timer because if you're still making points, I don't want to cut you off. As long as you're making points, though. The general population would benefit from healthcare, i.e., prenatal care and monitoring of genetic disorders. And in general, if you're going to make a robust argument, try to address at least 3 aspects. 3 different aspects. And I know it's difficult in 60 to 90 seconds, but the goal here, of course, is not to just go look stuff up. It's to use whatever existing knowledge you have to make a logical argument. If it's a fully logical argument, you get a full point. If it's semi-logical, if it's decent but not quite robust, you get a half a point. So you can we're only going to half points. Ethan W is the leader from round 1 with 1.5 points, and Profits C has 1 point. So we actually already have a tie because points carry over. So Profits C is already tied with QCZ, but she's still going to get to go. She didn't go yet on this round. The general population would... Okay, you already said that. Healthcare should be a right for the sake of equitable treatment of people in different demographics. All right, a couple more seconds if you want another point. Couple more seconds here. You don't have to make super long answers. You can if you want, but just keep rolling with your posts if you don't want to be stopped. If you are done before I call done, then type done when you're done with your argument. Couple more seconds here. Couple more seconds. Finish up. I'll give a non-accurate timer for the countdown. 5. Okay. The law acknowledges the right for people to pursue happiness. Health is necessary aspect of a happy life. Done with that garbage. Okay, so let's examine Sun UV Liberty's argument here. Okay, so... And always pay attention to my phrasing, because it is very intentional. Because notice how I didn't specify which country, I didn't specify any of that. So it's up to you to address all potential aspects. So Sun UV Liberty said, since healthcare entities receive government funding, the public should benefit from their expense. Well, that is an unsubstantiated claim, so that would be circular argument or begging the question, because do healthcare entities receive government funding? Are there healthcare entities that don't, like private healthcare entities? And so is the government in charge of all? I mean, there's a lot of variables here, so with a robust response, you have to address that. Obviously, it's difficult in a short amount of time, but that's why we're going over this. The general population would benefit from healthcare, i.e. prenatal care and monitoring of genetic disorders. Yes, so obviously, if the general population, again, and how are we agreeing to this? And who's funding it? So if it's coming from taxes, obviously, then that's theft. So should something be a right that is gleaned from unlawful means like theft or coercion? That's kind of a built-in argument into that, which I intentionally didn't specify. That's why the phrasing was the way it was. So when you're developing logical argumentation, it's up to you to figure this out. So healthcare should be a right for the sake of equitable... Oh, well, the point before, they would benefit. Well, they would benefit. That's true. That's true. But again, built on what? So that's an incomplete answer there, because yes, they would benefit. I mean, I don't want to specifically cite it's an appeal to emotion fallacy, because it's not specifically appeal to emotion. There's a benefit there, not necessarily emotional, but it's incomplete there. Healthcare should be a right for the sake of equitable treatment of people in different demographics. So I don't think anybody would argue that, but again, a right built on what? So where would the money come from, like, or the labor? Are there should there be volunteer clinics that everybody has a right to go to? Like, how and why would that be figured out? The law acknowledges the right for people to pursue happiness. Health is a necessary aspect of a happy life. That is true, but this is almost like a compositional logical fallacy, and even it's not, I don't want to say it's a red herring, although I guess it could fall under that category as well, because the law acknowledges the right to pursue happiness, not the right to health, even though health is a necessary aspect of a happy life. So that is true, but it's not built into the law that you have a right to health. Because again, if you're drinking alcohol all day, if you have a right to health, is that the right to exploit another's labor that was taken from them in the form of taxes for them to treat you if you don't have a job and you're just sitting around drinking? So, right to pursue happiness is not the same thing as a right to health. Although, if you want to argue there should be a right to health, you can also make that. You could make that argument, but you didn't. Okay, so yeah, Sun UV Liber said nearly all of them get grants, including the education facilities. Yes, of course it's incomplete. It's a 2-minute argument. Come on, man. So, well, the point was in the establishment. Like, how would you establish that? Like, for example, in an Amish community or any kind of extremely closed off community where everybody's working for the good of the community, either through barter, like how would the healthcare be given? I mean, that's a critical aspect. Now, obviously, you don't have to describe. You have it's short, so you make a quick reference to depending on the nature of the society. You can give an Amish example. You can give super quick. Obviously, it's really tough. That's the point here. If it was super super easy, we probably wouldn't be learning that much. But does that make sense? Lord Zed says, "What if nobody wants to be a doctor?" Well, I mean, you could address that if you want, but it wasn't exactly, you know. Yeah, that it is that could be relevant. Yes, healthcare doesn't necessarily mean doctor either. I mean, if everybody's living, if you're the Amish living in a farm, I mean, the Amish have had a longer life expectancy than modern Americans for at least 300 years. So their average life expectancy was always in the 70s, even when everybody else's was in whatever, the 50s or 60s, living in industrialized cities. They lived on farms eating fresh food. They worked outdoors. They had healthy lifestyles. So a lot of people say the average lifespan was 60 or 50 in the past. It wasn't for the total population. They also built in war casualties. So if we're only looking at health, the average lifespan of humans was not shorter in the past. Maybe the humans living in cities with no sewer systems and close quarters and with spoiled food and no refrigeration, yes, but the people living on farms didn't really have a lower lifespan unless, you factor in war casualties. So there's a lot of different ways to address that. Sun UV Liber said, to be fair, you didn't ask me to design a system, you asked me to make an argument, and don't ask me about the Amish, it'll get ugly. Well, yeah, but the argument was specifically phrased that way. Because in order to not be fallacious, you can't just assume I meant the US. I mean, I didn't say not the US either. That's up to you to address if this, then that. It's all about the phrasing. And obviously it's tough. I mean, those were decent answers. I mean, nobody would argue against, people, you need health to pursue happiness. I mean, that's all true. That's all true. But there needs to be a little bit more specificity. Just a little bit. Not a lot. You don't have to write entire books and essays. Just a little bit more. Lucky Haskins. Yeah, the question was defend the right, not how to provide it. Or why? Well, yeah, so you would kind of have to address what kind of a system it is, because in one system it's not a right. In another system it could be. Like, for example, if you have a village of 10 people, it all depends. It all depends. Well, you have to address it because, I mean, you kind of have to even address what is right. I know you only have 60, 90 seconds. Like I said, I wouldn't stop you. If you're still giving answers, I'm not going to cut you off. Like, this question, probably, you're right. It probably was one of the tougher ones to kind of, squeeze into 60 to 90 seconds. It's tough, of course. So, if you kept going, I wouldn't have stopped you. So, I'm not going to stop anybody. There's no official timer. When I'm about to call it, I'm going to go slow, like 5, 4, and then if you keep going, I'll stop counting. So, okay, who is next? I forgot who was next. Was it Prophet C? And then Ethan W. Yeah, I think so. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, hold on. Let me carry over your points, Profits. So, Prophet C scored 1 point in round one, and all points always carry over. Regardless of, even if, let's say you skip a few rounds, you couldn't make a couple of rounds, it doesn't matter if you show up for round 20, you're still bringing all your points that you ever got. Sun UV Liberty, the stream froze on me. I couldn't hear what was going on. Yeah, well, that's also why I don't want an official timer, because, that does happen. You could also mention it froze, and I'll give you a little bit extra time just for anybody listening. QCZ says, so a good argument could be in a society that permits or subtly encourages unhealthy life choices, capitalism, because they are profitable, that society could give back healthcare to perpetuate. Yeah, in that kind of line. I'm liking you, QCZ. I hope you show up for more of these. I like the way you phrase things. Although, the exact definition of capitalism would be relevant there, because a lot of people use corporatism in interchangeably with capitalism. Obviously, they're on opposite ends of the spectrum, but I'm liking QCZ here. The current reigning champion is Ethan W. Prophet C was in second place, but now QCZ is also in second place. But Prophet C didn't. She didn't get to go yet. She's up next. And she's carrying over her 1 point from the previous round. Okay, Prophet C, are you ready? Okay. Provide a logical argument against electric vehicles. A logical argument against electric vehicles. Against electric vehicles. $60 to 90 seconds. Let's see what she can bring to the table here. I would argue that the batteries are counterintuitive. They are actually bad for the environment. Secondly, I do think they are a Trojan horse for carbon taxes. About another 20 seconds or so. I would also say that they've been known to mistake people or animals and stop in the middle of the road when there was nothing. 10, 15 more seconds, unless you're still rolling. I'm not going to stop anybody if they're still giving responses. You can't give responses forever, though. Somewhere around the 2 minutes, you can get anywhere from maybe extend to 2, maybe 2.5 max, if you're still giving responses and points. And so, I don't like cutting people off. But people have fallen asleep and put on auto and caused accidents. Couple more seconds, make your final points. Final point here, final second. You could finish up, otherwise I'm gonna call it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll wait if you got one more final. You can bring it through. Okay, if you're still going, you can go, but you gotta give those responses. If there's too much of a gap between response times, I'm gonna call you on it. Okay, so, I mean, if you're done, put done. Otherwise, if you got no more points coming in, I will call it. Okay, so that's it. So let's examine Prophet C argument here for or against electric vehicles. So I would argue that the batteries are counterintuitive. They are actually bad for the environment. Okay, so interesting argument. Now, where's the support there? So that is a true statement, obviously, and the amount of even if you're presupposing carbon emissions are actually bad, they're still do the batteries cause more carbon emissions, like the lithium mining and all that, and more damage to the environment across all areas? You could also bring up, for example, if she supported that more, not just environment, but child labor in the African lithium mines. I mean, there's a lot of prophecy says, I'm doing voice to text. It won't let me send more than one sentence. Okay. I mean, yeah, you're fine. I mean, you got a lot of points in there. I mean, you're good. So that's a good point, but there could have been more support there. Not enough support there. Secondly, I do think that they are a Trojan horse for carbon taxes. Wow. And she came up with that one really quick. That was second point. So, wow. Yeah, so exploiting, I mean, it's almost like emotional blackmail in a way, because governments or even electric companies kind of appealing to, let's save the environment or we'll all die and the earth will be, whatever. So we have to get electric vehicles. And then also, obviously, the amount of money put into this, obviously, yes, it's not just a Trojan horse for carbon taxes, but again, corporatism type kickbacks. Those would all be good arguments. So again, she supported the carbon taxes there. Obviously, could have done a little bit more, but not bad. I would also say that they've been known to mistake people or animals, stop them in the road when there was nothing. Okay, so a problem with efficiency there. Yeah, of course, with the technological design. People have fallen asleep and put it on auto cause that. See, that one's a little tougher, because I would argue that, not all electric vehicles even have self-drive mode. So you could argue the ones that do, I mean, that's more of an argument against self-drive. Like, Tesla's caused a number of fatal accidents. I don't remember what they're up to. They're up to like 15, 20 now, or at least the disclosed ones. They drove off a cliff, they drove into a lake, and the person drowned. But self-drive isn't exactly the same thing, and people have fall asleep and cause accidents in regular non-electric vehicles as well. So that one, not specific enough there. Our grid can't handle the grid. Grid can't handle charging them all. Yes. Okay, so now you have an issue with the power. Yeah, that's a major issue. So, pretty good argument. Could have had more support. I'm going to grant a half a point to Prophet C, because it's a pretty decent argument, but would have liked to see a little bit more support for the full point. Well, and the Trojan horse for carbon taxes was a good point as well. Just, a little bit more support. So she did a really good job of addressing multiple points. That's what I meant. She addressed multiple points, just had a little bit more support for some of them, and that would have been a full point. So she gets she gets a half a point. So she is in the lead for this round, and tied with Ethan W., who's up next. Should I write out Ethan W0406 or just Ethan W? I guess Ethan W should be fine. So Ethan W, but yeah, another good job by Prophet C. So So wow. So basically, what's gonna happen here? I think profits see. Okay, so wait, hold on a second. Let me carry over. Let me carry over Ethan W's points because Ethan W has 1.5. So we might have some kind of a tie break here, possibly. Okay. Yeah, he didn't go yet. Those are his carried over points from round one. Ethan W, are you here and are you ready? I am Ion's Cat says, I didn't hear the question, but aren't electric cars a hedge against coming off the petrodollar? At least a pretend hedge to argue to OPEC that the U.S. will just use electricity if oil is cut severely. Wow, you're going deep there. You're going deep. I mean that opens up a lot of cans of worms, regardless regarding whether or not oil is actually limited. But okay, Ethan W is going now. He was our previous leader. Well, he's still technically the leader until after this turn, and then we'll see who's ahead on points. So let me go to my topics list. I will randomly pick one. Ethan W., here is your topic. You are arguing for nationalism. An argument for, in support of nationalism. For, in support of nationalism. Let's see what Ethan W. can come up with. If it was that easy, we wouldn't be learning here. Being able to argue both sides of everything is the key to developing high level logical comprehension skills and reasoning ability. Because then you'll also know the best arguments of any opposing view. So then you could even preempt, like you can shut down arguments that aren't even made yet with your own arguments. Ethan W. here. Nationalism needs to be defined, but is nationalism support of and pride for one's country? Then nationalism should be encouraged to promote people's desire to defend their nation, work hard to build up their nation. Give you another 30 seconds or so. See what you got here. If there were no nation or boundaries per se, then it could be difficult to establish rules and laws that are agreeable by the people who live there. Give you about 10 more seconds or so. If we don't establish nations in areas, then laws, rules, and regs for people in different climates or geographical regions might make laws that are nonsensical. For people in other areas, finish up. If you're still posting points, I won't stop you, but if you pause for too long, gotta wrap it up then. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Final point could come through, otherwise you are done. Okay, cool. So let's examine Ethan W.'s response. Nationalism needs to be defined, but is nationalism support of and pride for one's country? Yes. Then nationalism should be encouraged to promote people's desire to defend their nation, work hard to build up the nation. Okay, well, so that's also kind of incomplete because it's why should they defend their nation? So, for example, obviously you could have brought up external threats, because if people don't care, then, they're not going to want to join the military or whatever. Nobody cares, they'll be overrun and the entire population could go down. So just, something to support that. Obviously, work hard to build up their nation, yes, and you could have also mentioned, building up their nation by working together. That means all the people would prosper together by building it up, as opposed to people just living in a cabin in the woods, if that was their desire, obviously, mentioning the desire of the people. If there were no nation or boundaries per se, then it could be difficult to establish rules and laws that are agreeable by the people who live there. So that's kind of a non sequitur, because we're not talking about the need for existence of nations and boundaries. We were talking about nationalism itself, which you correctly defined right in your opening. So support or prides for a country, not whether nations and countries should exist in the first place. If we don't establish nations and areas, then laws and rules and regs for people in different countries. So yeah, that was more of a non sequitur, because and you have no excuse because you accurately define nationalism. So I mean, you seem to know exactly what nationalism is, but then you were arguing for the need to establish nations, not the need for nationalism. Whereas your first point actually did address exactly what nationalism is and why. So you had the 2 points: defending the nation, building up the nation, which were excellent, but you didn't really back them up. So in general, I would say that's closer to a quarter point, which would be rounded to 0. So we are in need of a tiebreak situation now, because Prophet C and Ethan W are both in first place, and we need to do a tiebreak here. So are you guys up for it? So tiebreaks, hello Miranda, how's it going? So tiebreaks are as follows, and it's funny because Prophet C and Ethan W were the ones who had to do the tiebreak in round 1. So the tiebreak, they're going to be arguing simultaneously. So I just pick one topic, I'll say who's for, who's against on the same topic, and they simultaneously have 60 to 90 seconds to defend it. So, we are going Star Trek here. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Prophet C is for the needs of the many outweighing the few. Ethan W is against the needs of the many outweighing the needs of the few. Prophet C for, Ethan W against. Prophet C for, Ethan W against. Go. 60 to 90 seconds to defend the points, or to make the arguments. Let's see what they can do. We need to have little jingles here, like Jeopardy jingles. Prophecy, I would argue the needs of the many similar to planting a garden. If too many weeds come in, the original plants will die. Ethan W., the needs of the many do not outweigh the needs of the few, as the needs of the few will likely be very specific and different from case to case. This is not communism night. We're talking about electric vehicles here. I'm actually going to wait until they're both done with the arguments, then I'll read theirs one at a time. Hello, Tony's Coffee House. Welcome, welcome. We're just wrapping up this round. We're in a tie-break situation here. They got about another 30 seconds or so. Wrap up your arguments. You can make your final points here. Final points. If you're still coming in with the responses, I won't stop you, but okay. Prophecy's still going. Ethan W., finish up. If you're still not making points, gonna have to call it soon. Okay, he's still going. Final points. Let's go. One or two more, and then we can wrap this up. Alright. You can get one more in real quick. If you're still going, you get one more in real quick before we finish. Okay. Prophecy, just a question. Are you familiar with Star Trek? I actually don't I don't even watch Star Trek, but I'm familiar with that one. Yeah, many just mean the majority. The needs of the majority outweigh the needs of the minority. But let me go through let me yeah. I mean, it's tough. This is tough. Okay, so let me go. Okay, Prophecy's going to go first. She was defending the needs of the many, in support of the needs of many and the few. I would argue that the needs similar to planting a garden. If too many weeds come in, the original plants will die. So that's an interesting comparison. I would not say that's a non-congruent argument fallacy, because that's pretty congruent. Because if weeds start to infect, if weeds start to infect, I mean, it is kind of tricky too, because yeah, I don't know, maybe it is a non-congruent argument, because weeds aren't humans with rights, but the idea is still kind of the same. So let's say if viruses are real and there was some kind of, or a bacteria is real, if there was a spreading bacterial infection in an area of a city, would you quarantine that area to prevent it from spreading and infecting the rest of the city? I mean, that would be a little bit more congruent, because obviously, plants are not humans with human rights, but I mean, plants are still living things. So yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't call that a non. I mean, maybe, I don't know. It's possibly a non. It's actually interesting. But the point kind of remains the same, because if you used, let's say, some kind of infection spread, I mean, yeah, like you could use that. I mean, some more support would be good. I mean, because if everybody dies from that spread, that's not a bad point. Definitely not a bad point. This means you need to put your citizens before the others. The needs of the many is similar to protecting your borders. If you don't put citizens before the others, the citizens can be replaced. I guess that's an interesting argument. Were you trying to say that if you don't put the needs of the many ahead of the few in like isolated situations, like the board, let's look at the border. If there are farmers complaining about the border, and let's say it would take too much money, theoretical situation, money and resources, like let's say there was also a war going on. Let's say there was multiple natural disasters and hurricanes and tornadoes all over the country. So the few citizens that are along the border of, let's say, the border of Texas, they're complaining, and so the threat could possibly be even greater. So do you address the greater threat to the maximum amount of people? I'm guessing that's what you meant by that argument, which is not bad, but it would also need a little bit more support. It does depend on who is deciding who the many are. I would have say who is deciding. I mean, if the many is fascist dictators or lobbyists, this is dangerous. If the many is your citizens, then this is the only way to keep a democracy. So let me slant this way. Let me slant this way. How are you counting everybody equally or not? Because then there's always corruption for that. That's kind of where my mind went to when you said that. So pretty good arguments. I would say half a point. Just, obviously could have had more support there, but not bad. So Prophet C is in the lead now with 2 points. Now let's examine Ethan W's argument here. So the needs of the many do not outweigh the needs of the few, as the needs of the few will likely be very specific and different from case to case. Now, that is also non-congruent argument, possible non sequitur, and red herring, because we weren't talking about why would it be that, obviously they're different case, obviously everything's different case to case. Why would that necessitate that? Like, what would the penalties be? Like, for example, you could bring up the needs could result because different people, yes, different people need different needs, that's correct, but what is the result of that? So if you're giving a broad prescription for an issue, a broad solution, not fine-tuned to individuals, then those individuals would have their human rights violated. So you didn't really go into that. Like, if you had just mentioned that exactly like that, that would be a support. The needs of the few are likely to be less expensive overall, as the volume of needs would likely be reduced. As such, we can probably more effectively address those needs more completely if needed. That is correct, yes. So there's definitely a monetary aspect to it. Yeah, not bad. Addressing only small issues naturally encourages society as a whole to become more self-sufficient, knowing they do not have a sweeping safety net. Very good point there. And that's all you got. Yeah, I would say, yeah, those are 2 good points, but not enough support on the first one, and I would have still liked probably a little bit more of a robust answer. Yeah. And then you also had the not going into, basically not explaining the result of those needs not being addressed in your opener. So I'm going to go half a point and we're back to a tie. Oh man, are we going into double overtime here? Seconds, wow. Wow. Are you guys good to go again? Are you too exhausted? You can forfeit. If you're too tired, you can forfeit the victory with no change in points. If both of you just wanna get the gold. I don't want to force people to have to keep competing. Are you guys both good with sharing the gold? QCZ has the silver. Or do you do if at least one of you want to go for want to win this, want to go down in history, in the history books of Mindshock, of Mindshock Logical Impacts? Ethan W is down. Prophet C, are you down? Okay, you're down. You better not tie again. Oh man. Lucky Haskins says no softies, let's play. Oh man. Oh man. Theoretically, I mean, this could go on forever. Okay, here's the topic: the theory of evolution. Prophets C is against, Ethan W is for. Prophet C is against the theory of evolution. Ethan W is for the theory of evolution. Prophet C is against, Ethan W for. Let's see what these fantastic competitors, neck and neck. They had one tiebreak round in round one. Now this is the second tiebreak for round two. Evolution. Let's see what they come up with. I'm not going to read the responses. I'm just going to wait till they're all done for tiebreak rounds, and then I'll go through them individually. Sudden death, double overtime. I'm hoping we don't go to round three. Triple sudden death overtime. Or quadruple. Let's do, what do we got left? Maybe 30 seconds or so left. Twenty seconds. Lord Zed, the topic was evolution. Prophet C is against, Ethan W is for. In the double overtime sudden death round, they have about another 10 seconds or so to finish up. So finish up your final points in sudden death over double overtime. Finish up final points rolling. I don't want to stop you if you're still making points, but finish up. Let's go. A couple more seconds. If you're still rolling, you can roll, but if there's too much of a pause, I'm gonna call you. We're finishing up. Finish up. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you guys are done unless there's something coming in right now. All right, I'm calling it. All right, I'm calling it. You guys are all set. Lord Zed, everything evolves, even I adapt to climate when I move to get tanner in Florida, for example. Well, is that evolution or adaptation, my friend? Which, again, is is the critical point here. Okay, so let's go over prophecy first. Against the theory is not complete. It's a good point. Darwin missed many species. He did not include the cone skulls in Peru or the younger Dryas. Okay, those would be circular reasoning, possible false premises, presupposing that those are legitimate. Because you'd have to support evidence for those if you want to use them that way. But he did obviously miss a ton of species. Darwin was also paid by the Rothschilds, which some could conclude lessens his authenticity. Okay, well, you would have to have a citation there. There'd need to be a citation there to support that. Like, real quick, I'm not asking for a link or anything. Like, if you just had, something, like another individual who corroborated it, or some kind of book by an author, even if you can't really remember, just something that could point us in the direction of that. Obviously, this is, there's not a lot of time here. I'm not asking for links or even complete name. I mean, if you have a name of a book or a paper, that's fine. But just some kind of general, this paper by just some general reference to something, so there's something to substantiate it. It is actually all putting trust into one man like God. Well, so that would be the case if it was only evolution. Evolution is true because Darwin said so. So there's a huge body of work, let's call it. Whether it's scientifically valid or not, there's a huge body of work, so it's not putting the trust into one man, much like God. So, okay, what else? Okay, so yeah, I'm not gonna be able to award points there. I mean, it would be probably a quarter point, which would be rounded to 0, because Darwin did miss many species. But then, there's no substantiation there for the cone skulls, the younger Dryas, the age, verifying age and all that. So here's how I would have argued it against Darwin, because first of all, in Darwin's final book or journal, he admitted that the theory was completely bunk, mostly because of the human eye and the voice box, because there's just no intermediaries for that. They're so advanced. And the other point is the main body of scientific literature supposedly supporting evolution. Hello, Cassidy Smoke. Yes, son, UV Liberty. Darwin did renounce the theory at the very end of his life. Everybody ignores that. That's not taught in any schools. Yes, he shifted to intelligent design because of the human eye and the voice box primarily. Now, here's the other point I would use against evolution, is that the entire body of scientific literature doesn't actually support evolution at all, because there is no observation of a species turning into another species. All of the observations, including Darwin's, are adaptations of the same species adapting. And all the scientific literature basically conflates that and pretends that because adaptation is real, which it obviously is, you can observe that, the same species making adaptations over time. Somehow that means species can magically turn into another one. Yes, that is a lot to type. But, that would be instead of other arguments made. So, for example, if I was going to type it really fast, I would just type in Darwin actually renounced it because of the human eye and voice box, because they were too advanced. And scientific literature supports adaptation, which is not the same thing as evolution. since no species have been observed turning into other species. So, that's a couple sentences. I'm just explaining it more just for the chat here. No, QCZ, because how would the adaptation, like for example, a slight color change, how would that, or like a slightly longer beak, how would that magically turn something into a completely different species? Because we can't ignore the scientific method here. We need observation. We can't just magically say, oh, millions of years. So I can't award points for prophecy. Let's see if Ethan W. got any points here. If he didn't, I don't know if we're going to go into triple overtime. Okay, so let's see. Evolution is if defined as adaptations of species can be seen on small scales in creatures, slightly varying characteristics and genetic codes. We have seen similar animals in vastly different locations. Well, the problem is evolution is not defined as adaptation. Because adaptation is adaptation, evolution is evolution. Now, it is slightly varying characteristics and genetic codes within the same species. We have seen similar animals in different locations. Well, I mean, what does similar animals in different locations mean? Like, that can mean a lot of different things. If the theory of Pangea is true, that still wouldn't support evolution. Or they could have been transported. Or all animals could have always existed everywhere and died out in places but not other places. So that would be a false dichotomy if you're saying that they can't be in different places without evolution. Which could mean that evolved to meet their needs to succeed in the region. We see this in dog strengths. Yeah, so that's all adaptation. So, okay, so this is all from false premise, Ethan W. We also have seen this over time. Many dogs evolve to become more docile. So that's, behavioral adaptation. Yeah, so that's all adaptation arguments. So, no, man. Oh, man, I can't award any points there. We're really going into triple sudden death overtime. Unless you don't want to. If you both don't want to, you both get a gold medal. You share your victory. I think we should we have a maximum overtimes? We can't just keep going forever. I think we should just call it. You guys are both gold medalists. You guys are both gold medalists. So you guys both won round 2. Are you guys cool with that? QCZ with the, yeah. Yeah, we have 2 winners. We can have 2 winners. Sometimes there are 2 gold medalists. So the precedent is we're not going to go more than 2. Like, we got to keep it fair. So we're never going to go more than 2 overtimes. If after 2 overtimes there's no solution, then people are sharing medals. So nice job, everybody. Prophet C, Ethan W, both win round 2, and they're both tied going into round 3. If you miss round 3, that's okay. Your points will all will carry over whichever round you show up next. Lucky Haskins says Ethan kind of was stuck because the only argument for evolution is adaptation, so he had to pretend it wasn't. Well, yes, but the problem was that he shouldn't have clearly defined adaptation. He shouldn't have clearly used adaptation to try to prove evolution, because a good argument for evolution would be, let's say, in some cases there are, you can argue that you have Cro-Magnon, Neanderthal, you have progressions, which that doesn't prove evolution, but it could. You're using that in support. It doesn't mean it's true, but if you avoid the adaptation, you probably could make a logical argument without avoiding adaptation, but it's tricky. It's very tricky, as you pointed out. I mean, this is why we do these. Sun UV Liberty, I don't hate you. What are you talking about? Lord said, I want a rematch. I don't even believe in planets, let alone aliens. Lucky Haskins, anyone arguing in favor of evolution would be using fallacies, right? No. For example, you can point to evidence of similar species. And as long as you don't say that proves evolution, you're simply arguing in favor, as long as you don't say that can only mean evolution is true. That's false dichotomy. If you point to evidence and say it could support, the theory of evolution could be true because of this, this, and this, you could work in adaptation where clearly there's at least some kind of genetic mutations already seen. So perhaps, I mean, you have to, it's hard. It's definitely tough. That's why we do these. You kind of almost have to appeal to ignorance, which is a fallacy, but you're plugging it in a little bit. You're supporting it. It can, as long as you're not using it as direct proof. Again, because of the non-observation of species turning into other species. So there are ways to do it. I mean, but it is very tricky, of course. It's very tricky. That's why we do these. So everybody can kind of learn how to do it. So you would have to do that. Well, it's not a true appeal to ignorance, because you're not saying, well, over time, we might not know exactly how it happened, but it definitely happened. See, when you use words like definitely or it proved, then that's a fallacy. If you leave the door open to many possibilities, one of which includes evolution, but you're not making the positive claim that it can only be evolution, you can still make a logical argument in favor of it, as long as you're not definitively stating it can only be evolution and it can't be anything else. Does that make sense? Very tricky. It's obviously very tricky. It's all in the phrasing. It's all in the phrasing. And again, if you phrase it as in certain of these species died out, and then we have other species they evolved too. Obviously, one of the points against evolution is the existence of species that supposedly were evolved from. But it's all in the phrasing. That's what prevents it from being a fallacy. When you see all these debates, people are always falling for these false dichotomies where, no, it's this because. Clearly it's not. But it could be because of this. That would be non-fallacious. Does that make sense? Because you're not making the definitive positive claim that this is the exact reason. You can leave the door open to unknowns, of course. There are always unknown variables. Okay, so I hope that was elucidating for many. We had a lot of tough ones today. Well, Ethan W. Bruce, does that mean evolution is either intentional adaptation or random variances the genetic code passed down by? That's all under the umbrella of adaptation. Evolution, there's actually, I believe, 8 different definitions of evolution, which already tells you something. When you need that many definitions to try to prove a theory. But in general, the theory would necessitate a species turning into another species, another unique species, which nobody has ever observed. And a lot of times people fallaciously argue evolution because they go all the way back to the Big Bang. And then they argue, somehow magically energy created a rock, and then somehow, an ocean sprouted up on the rock that grew, and then somehow magically, there were fish, and then it turned into a monkey and a human with extra steps in between. That's how most people argue evolution, because it's so fallacious. If you ignore all those fallacies and only argue species turning into another species because of these possibilities, and you don't make those direct claims, you could make a non-fallacious argument. It wouldn't be a great argument, but it is possible to avoid fallacies if you're not making those direct claims. Because ultimately, they just keep adding, well, it takes millions of years. Which is kind of an appeal to ignorance. It's kind of nonsense to say anything can happen if you wait long enough. Like, if we stare at a rock long enough, life will sprout up on it. Like, it's just kind of a weird argument. Obviously, that's not, the problem is there's so many goofs arguing for evolution in the most fallacious way possible out there. It's not impossible to argue for it, but it is very tough. So, Prophecy says, I have a feeling these questions are going to get a lot harder. I try to mix it up. I really do. I don't particularly go for hard or easy. I go random. So, some will be hard, some will be easy. But thanks again, everybody, for joining us for another edition of the Logic Olympics. Actually, I missed a question. Somebody asked a Dunning-Kruger question. Hold on. Cassidy Smoke, when does the Dunning-Kruger League of Champions fire up? What do you mean, the logic analyses? The first test run of the new system was Matt Walsh. I have 2 more on the older system. I'm gonna finish up, and then the new ones are all gonna be with the new system. Cassidy Smoke said, have you guys noticed that when people tout the popular narratives, they seem to get a free pass on fallacies? Well, it depends. That's because there's no moderator like me. So I will be hosting some debates on here as well, where I'll be calling out all fallacies, but there's going to be a pre-debate quiz. Nah, Ethan W., because we're constantly learning. Everybody's doing a pretty good job. I mean, nobody really did a bad job. I mean, it's all about learning. That's the whole point of this. This isn't the Mindshock debate. I mean, I'm going to be hosting actual debates, which are going to be formal debates. Where, I mean, and this is going to help everybody learn. So if you do want to, participate in those, you'll be armed. I mean, this is all a learning exercise. It's not Dunning-Kruger if you are learning and clearly understand what's going on and how to improve, which has been everybody thus far. There really hasn't been anybody, I think, who didn't learn and was able to understand what is or isn't fallacious based on their own arguments. Furthermore, this is really tough to do in 60 to 90 seconds. The reason I do 60 to 90 seconds is just to get as many people participating as possible because, so it's more fun. Oh, QCZ, Dunning-Kruger is basically people that are too incompetent to realize their incompetence. So then they don't learn. A lot of time it goes hand in hand with narcissism. You can check out, I do in my logic and psychology playlist on here. I go over that a lot. And I actually went over it also on the Matt Walsh video. Check it out. At the beginning where I explain the new system, I explained Dunning-Kruger with a chart and everything. So check that out. All right. So Cassidy Smoke, yeah, next time you are, yes, Ethan W. The topics are a field of landmines. That is true. Some of them might be a little easier to get around than others. And yeah, as long as everybody's learning and having fun, we are accomplishing our goal here. So yeah, thanks again everybody for joining us. There'll be plenty more to come. If you want to help support the Mindshock podcast, help logic and reason return to a world where it's quickly going extinct, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. You can also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Help support the channel. That way, make sure you subscribe, like, and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.